Hi everyone, my name is Michael Phelan. I'm a software engineer with Intel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about OVS DPDK Community Auto Validation. So Community Auto Validation is simply providing a platform for testing OVS features which require hardware or platform specific capabilities such as Intel AVX512. I've been assisted in this work by Stokes, who is my tech lead with Intel, and Conole, who works with Red Hat. So let's get into the presentation. So traditionally patches for OVS have been validated by a variety of means. These have included Travis CI, Appveyor, GitHub, and Read the Docs, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. But as more and more features are added to OVS that require specific hardware or platform capabilities, these traditional methods find it hard to cover all the bases. As well as this, developers who are submitting patches to OVS do not always have the means to test these specific features. This can result in patches being submitted to the OVS mailing list, which may break existing features without the developer's knowledge. This is where the need for community auto validation comes in. Developers need to know that their patches are being tested on all platforms with all hardware capabilities enabled without requiring any extra workload for the developer. So let's get into our solution. What we've done is set up a local Jenkins instance on a machine in the Intel lab, which has access to the required instruction set for performing AVX512 operations. This allows Jenkins to run jobs which build OVS with AVX512 enabled and run the OVS DPDK unit tests. So if we take a look at the diagram at the bottom of the screen and work our way from left to right, we can see how this works in practice. So first of all, the developer will write their patch as usual and upload it to the mailing list. This patch will then appear on Patchwork, and we are using the scripts from the OVS zero-day robot, which was designed by Conole and Michael Santana, to retrieve the patches from Patchwork and then launch Jenkins build jobs with these patches. So these scripts will be run once a day, and they will retrieve any newly submitted patches and launch a Jenkins pipeline job for each individual patch. This Jenkins pipeline job will then launch 3 separate Jenkins build jobs, each of which tests an OVS feature with AVX512 enabled. The 3 features which are currently being tested are the datapath classifier, the datapath interface, and the miniflow extract. So these jobs are very similar in how they are run. First of all, they will take the series ID as a parameter. It will then download the series and apply it to the local Git repo before building OVS with the specified configuration. And if building is successful, it will run the OVS DPDK unit test to test the required functionality. And the results of the 3 individual jobs will be gathered, and the pipeline build job will send out an email to the mailing list for developers to review. Each job is independent of one another, so it may be possible that the datapath classifier test will fail and the other 2 tests will pass, so developers need to keep an eye out on that. So if we move on to the next slide, it shows a sample result email for a successful build. So it will have some key information such as the build result, which in this case is a success, the series ID, the link to the patch series on Patchwork, and a log for each of the individual tests. Also at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that it has a result for each individual test as well. So this should cut down on debugging time for a developer if something does go wrong with one or more of the tests. And on the right hand side, you will also notice a link. This link just shows the requirements for the emails and their specified layout if anyone wants more information on that. So let's move on to the next slide. So next steps for this project would be to include testing for other proprietary capabilities, such as hardware offload or the Intel Data Streaming Accelerator. We would also like to include jobs which test performance rather than only focusing on functional testing. Also, we need to handle some corner cases. For example, we know that not all patches being submitted are targeted for the master branch. So we will need developers to put some keywords in email headers to allow us to parse the intended branch so we can ensure that the results we return are accurate. So that's all from me. I'd like to thank you for your attention. I'll open up the floor now to answer any questions that you may have. And if I can't get to your question now, or you just want more information, you can get in touch with myself, Ian, or Aaron at our emails provided on the slide. So thank you.
So let's start by inviting Ian and Aaron and Michael to voice and video. How are you guys?
Hey Ben, good seeing here from you again.
Yeah, it's been too long. Glad to interact at least live for first time in a while.
Always good.
So I'm hoping that we will start to see some questions pop up in the Q&A panel. But until that happens, would any of you like to say anything more about this work or about anything else?
Do you want to go ahead? Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I do want to say something. I have some opinions. Actually, I'm really excited because this is, I think, going to be the first. This is like the first other lab that integrates with the OVS upstream like testing efforts that have been going on, and it's kind of a trial run for some of the work that we did. I think all the way back in 2018. So it's really cool to see it, kind of going this way, and to see that we can actually work together, and provide a good service to the developers to, get some more insight into how the code is being used, how OVS is being used, and even just the direction that it's going.
That's good. Would anyone else like to add anything here?
Yeah, I just second Ben. I second Aaron's opinion as well. I remember, Aaron, I think we had a conversation back at the DPDK conference, possibly 2018, but definitely with the folks from Menlots at the time, but obviously now NVIDIA. But we spoke about this, and it's a real pain point that in the OVS community, different people have varying levels of hardware offload. It can be difficult sometimes for somebody to put a patch out and not break somebody else's implementation just because the majority of their drivers. I see a lot of potential for things like this, that this could expand to both other vendors, but also in what we're testing right now, we can expand that a huge amount. And even things like we were just speaking about, upgrading a DPDK version can be a big pain for us. Stuff like this automated testing, we ideally in a perfect world, we could just take a patch from the mailing list and we have a good idea of where things are. And, automation is king in terms of saving effort sometimes. So I think, I'm really excited with this. And just want to give a shout out to Michael as well, just the hard work he's been pushing on this. I think we're only advising him at a lot of time, Aaron. But I think also just the 0-day robot scripts as well were in an excellent condition to leave us go ahead with this. So that's fantastic as well. It was just a really fun project, but also it delivers something of quality to the community. So I hope people get value out of it going forward.
All right, thanks. So we do have a question that's popped up from Ilya Maximets. and he wants to know the coverage of the AVX512 tests, and in particular whether it covers only the system DPDK test suite, or whether it also covers the generic test suites. He says that the system DPDK test suite doesn't cover some of the things that the generic test suite does, including some of the ways that we do packet classification and parsing. So ideally, we'd want to cover all the test suites.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that at the moment it's just doing the DPDK unit tests, so I'm not too sure on whether there is some capabilities that aren't tested by that. So maybe Ian, you can explain better than I could.
I would say I think Ilya is raising a good point. The fact that we have a capability like this now, I think it can be expanded. I guess I would say, look, it's early days for us. We're trying to crawl before we walk, and definitely walk before we run. So there's definitely feedback we're more than willing to take back from the community to expand this in future as well. And that's a really good point from Ilya as well.
Do you see significant challenges to running the generic test suite? Usually, I think of the system test suites as the ones that are a little more challenging to run than the generic make check one.
No, I don't think there would be too much problem with running the normal ones either. It would just be an extra line of code to add to the Jenkins build job, I think.
Great. So we have a couple more questions now. First of all, Frode Nordahl asks, have you considered integrating with GitHub self-hosted runners infrastructure? And I think by that no, actually, I don't have an interpretation. So what do you think there?
So I'll try to take this. There's some complexity with using the GitHub self-runners infrastructure. First, someone actually needs to develop the app that gets used. I mean, you can use the GitHub app, but I think there's like some additional work that has to be put into it before you can deploy it on your own systems. Then we need to sort of spend some time getting that hooked up to all the different repositories, like the GitHub, like the OVS robot GitHub repository, would require sort of dealing with some permissions and tokens and other things. And then we probably also want it for the open vSwitch repository on GitHub, which would require sort of going through the same steps. For a one-off thing, it's probably not a big deal, but the hope is that more vendors will make their hardware available, and if each vendor has to kind of build some GitHub runner app, and then we have to go through the rigmarole of integrating it on the OVS robot side, the OVS robots GitHub, and then the open vSwitch GitHub, it would become a little bit difficult. So I think that's kind of why we went in this direction. It's just a little bit easier to have everyone kind of figure out their own lab situation and then just fire off an email to the builds mailing list. But it is something that has been talked about.
Sure. So we have a question here from Flavio Fernandez, who asks whether the Jenkins infrastructure has been stable and whether you have any lessons on deploying it and how to handle false positives.
Yeah, it's been pretty stable in my, some of the issues that have come up is kind of proxy issues more than accessing hardware and stuff like that. So on that side of things, it has been okay, I think.
Proxy meaning that it's behind some kind of firewall, and it's difficult to get the network access that you need.
Yeah, exactly. So sending the emails is required a bit of configuration, just because it's based on a board in the Intel lab, so that required some tinkering. Any lessons on deploying it? I can't think of too many right now, but I could probably gather a few and send them out if you wanted to, if you were interested in that. But yeah, I wouldn't really have anything to say on that at the moment.
I think,
Okay.
Michael, as
And
well,
on,
one of the things, Michael, you have mentioned here is that in fairness, I think, we've been eating our own dog food for the past week. We've had emails and patch reviews coming in to both Aaron, myself, and Michael, and we're just kicking the tires. We're trying to fix things. We don't want to start spamming the mailing list either with something that doesn't work. But I think it has been working to a degree, and we're making changes on our own site that we think will be good. But ultimately, we don't want to spend too long. We'd like to get something out maybe before we kind of discussed the 2.17 release. That would be nice. Just to have a feature there as well, or just a community auto validation feature would be nice going forward. So we are taking things like that on board, and hopefully we can get more feedback once it's kind of more public on the mailing list.
Great. I hope you feel appreciated. I know that testing can sometimes be frustrating work, and when everything goes right, it doesn't necessarily get you big kudos, but it's so valuable, and I'm so glad that that people are doing it. So thanks to all of you for the work and for giving us the presentation about it. It's about time.